Hey, Dan. Thanks so much for being on the GROWL Connect show.
Hey, Greg. Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, great. Well, let's get started here. My name's Greg Olson. I'm the founder of GROWL Agency. We're based out in Grand Junction, Colorado. For those that don't know where that is, about, follow I-70 west about 4 hours in a car, 8 hours in a train, and you'll get to Grand Junction, about 25 miles from the Utah border here. And we've been doing this Connect show for all throughout the year, and we've had great response. And we're really thankful to have great guests like Dan come on. So I'm going to let kind of, it's your show. We're going to kind of have a conversation. If anybody wants to ask any questions, go ahead. We can certainly take those through, of course, Facebook Live. We can take it on chat. But before we get started today, Dan, we're going to be talking about the dynamics in the buyer-seller relationship. So we're going to have a sales discussion. But before we get started, who the heck is Dan? So if you can just give a quick introduction and we'll go from there.
Well, sounds good. I've been in sales and sales management for over almost 30 years. And in that time, Greg, I saw a lot of people struggle with the sales process. I sold enterprise software to broadcasting cable organizations really throughout North America for the majority of my career. And early in the 90s, I was trained on Sandler. I was a fortunate salesperson that I actually received sales training. And I love the Sandler concepts. It's very natural to me. It's not slick in any way. It's really about discovering what's going on in your prospect's world and to figure out if there's even a fit. So I love those aspects of the process. It's very opposite of what traditional sales teaches us. So, I have a passion to help people really take their sales game to the next level, enjoy sales a lot more, and really have much more success so they can enjoy their personal or achieve their personal goals and aspirations as well.
I appreciate that. And you bring, of course, we'll be talking a lot about Sandler, and I'm a huge fan, as you know. I don't know the exact date, about 15, maybe, hate to date myself. For many years, I had an opportunity to be involved in Sandler and still am to this day, in a wonderful organization. And, Achievement Dynamics, who you're with, and you can talk a little bit about that. We'll give people how to get a hold of you and that if they're interested. But it's been a game changer for me over the years. I don't have a type of organization that, we have in-house sales training. I worked for an organization when I was younger that had a little bit of that, but it was different types. It was like a book of the month club. It was read this about closing hard, right? Or, go for the sale, or, so things that I don't know, my success rate probably wasn't awesome. Maybe I got lucky. I don't know. But I thought, it's really been a game changer about listening. I mean, it's really improved my life, listening and trying to understand those different dynamics. So why don't we dive into it with some questions? And I know if anybody has any, we'll take them on. So we brought up sales training. We brought up Sandler. Do you mind giving us some high level concepts? You brought in a little bit of that. I know you have all these years of training. Can you dive into a little bit why Sandler versus something else, or give our listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah, be happy to. And like you, I used to read books on sales early in my career, and it is so hard to take those concepts because one of the biggest things about sales training and different concepts is it takes us out of our comfort zone, and we have to really practice those skills and really learn them into where they become really a skill and maybe even a habit. It's so different than what we just show up and wing it kind of thing. So Sandler is a methodology that's been around for 45 years and really has evolved into today's world of sales. It's been modified over time. Like 25 years ago, you could make a sales cold call. It's hard to do that today. You got to be different. So 45 years of methodology. It's about, as I mentioned earlier, it's about discovering. So if I come to visit you, Greg, as a prospect, I'm going to discover. I'm going to show up to discover what's going on in your world. Is there a compelling need for what I have, and can I help you? And if not, it's okay to tell each other, hey, this isn't a really good fit. That's fine. It's it's different than, traditional salespeople show up and say, man, I really hope I can convince Greg to buy from me today. Convince and persuade are really difficult in sales. It's difficult for the salesperson, and it's really uncomfortable to the prospect. So Sandler's about having a really honest conversation with your prospect.
But people still do it to this day. I mean, how many times I have people come and talk to me or want to sell you something, which I would hate to be the person trying to sell you anything, Dan, be honest.
I love salespeople.
I know you do, but it's like, I would all of a sudden, I mean, it's just, you are so easy, but you end up turning it around in a great way, like asking them questions, I'm sure. So that's what I mean. I think it is a different approach. I never feel like I'm selling. So maybe that's what the beauty of this is over the years.
You're having a conversation. You're a consultant.
Is it a fit for me as a salesperson as much as a fit for them? And that's what Sandler taught me over the years. It's like, hey, as a salesperson, you should determine it too early on versus, you know, so I don't want to give away any of your talk, but I get excited because me and you, you've been a good mentor to me in the time that I've known you. And like, I can ask you a couple questions and you can like turn it around and be like, great, I'm going to try that. So
good.
Yeah, keep going. Good job.
I appreciate that. So I make it all about the prospect. People buy for their reasons, not because the salesperson, is persuading or convincing. And you gotta, as a salesperson, you have to find a compelling need. If people don't have a compelling need for what you do, and that's what we have to discover, they're not going to buy. They're going to tell you things like, hey, I love your presentation. Why don't you call me next Wednesday? And then we find ourselves chasing and they hide, okay? Because we didn't find a compelling need for what you could do together. And so I might talk a little bit more about that, later on in our conversation.
So, one of the things is, let's jump to another question that we have. What measures an individual salesperson, what measures can an individual salesperson use to evaluate their ability to reach higher level success? I'm always looking at that. I'm trying to be like, even as an owner of the company, I'm really the salesperson, right? And we're trying to organize. Right. But it's like, how can we evaluate that? How do I know, Dan, if I'm, other than sometimes I just like, is it more, it's obvious I look at my bank account and be like, do I have money coming in? But there's a better level that like as a salesperson. So one of the things a lot of people we work with and people listening, they might be individual like owner operators or entrepreneurs, they own their company, they're salespeople also. So again, if you're talking to me, Dan, like, hey, I don't have this big sales team, right? But how do I evaluate myself? So that's always a struggle I have.
Yeah. I love that question. There's a fundamental process in Sandler. It's called the success triangle. And, it's a triangle. The top part of the triangle is my attitudes and beliefs. What are my attitudes and beliefs towards whatever it is I'm doing? Asking for referrals, cold calls, presentations, whatever. And a lot of those attitudes and beliefs we have are negative towards sales, and they're formed in our childhood. Everything that we're told not to do in our childhood. Don't talk to strangers. Don't interrupt. Don't rock the boat. If somebody asks you a question, you answer it right away. All those things we have to do the opposite in sales. And so our attitudes and beliefs are really critical. Then it's the behaviors at the left-hand bottom corner of the triangle. What are our behaviors that are activities to identify new sales opportunities? Mm-hmm. They're the activities that I like to say we do day to day, hour by hour, that if we do those things, we're going to be successful on a 12-month basis. Okay, we have to be disciplined in sales. So it's we call it cookbook. It's the activities that drive our day-to-day performance. And then on the right-hand corner in the bottom is technique. Is having a sales system that you can follow and ask questions and discover. And that technique, that process is repeatable. Most salespeople don't have a system that's organized when they're in front of a prospect. It's the wing it method. And sometimes that works and other times it doesn't.
I call it sometimes just get up and hustle, which is without a plan. So your head down, and I think I end up wasting more time. But you have helped me kind of put together that cookbook strategy, right? and go back
Right.
to these things and look at them every day versus head down. And I feel like the head down approach, although I can make it, next thing you know, I'm spending, I don't know, 25% more time trying to get to the same dollars too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's your roadmap. It's like if I was going to drive to San Francisco, I know I got to go through Grand Junction, right?
Yeah.
But if I didn't have a map, am I going to get there effectively? Is it going to be efficient, or is it going to take me 10 days?
Sure.
You know, a map, it's the same with sales for 12 months, your goals. Your day-to-day activities are driven by your goals. And with a good cookbook, you're going to achieve your goals for the year.
You know, I like that. Hey, let's jump into communication skills.
Okay.
We talk a lot about that. I feel like as a salesperson, most salespersons feel like they communicate great, right? We're go-getters, we're extroverts. I can walk up into a room and shake a hand and move around. Now even different on a virtual world, but salespeople generally, they're good at talking, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's why they're, hey, you're really good with, you're really good with people, Greg, we'll have you sell. Well, and I thought I was great at selling, and I thought I was good at building rapport. And even as good as I was, there was a huge void that I could get a lot better. And so I think communication strategies are really powerful in the sales process. And Sandler drives a lot of that. One of the things I like to talk about is a communication pie. You know, 7% of, if you and I meet for the first time, 7% of our evaluations of each other are the words we use. 55% are our body language. And 38% is the tone we use. Yeah. So I use a lot of tone when I'm talking to prospects. Why? Because I want them to feel comfortable communicating with me, answering my questions. So really what we can do, the high level goal of a sales conversation is to find the truth. The prospect be truthful with you. And when you build that comfort through tone and good questioning, it's a really powerful, fun world to be in instead of guessing and assuming. So
do you have an advice for salespeople who might, and I find myself doing this, talking a little too much?
Yeah.
I mean, or answering a question, how do we say this, Dan? Unspoken objections, or answering, or telling too much. I am so smart. You taught me this. I'm so smart, I just keep talking, right? And tell you everything I know, Dan, because I know a lot.
Right. Well, we say never answer an unasked question.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's always about the prospect. So if they have A and B problems, that's all we address, not G, H, and K, because we're great at those things. It just overwhelms the prospect and they go in a different direction. So never answer an unasked question. And the other thing that I like to tell my clients, and this is critical, when I took Sandler in the 90s, my trainer said, if you're telling, you're not selling. Okay. And the point of that is a salesperson, a good salesperson should talk 30% or less. Okay. And Greg, how do you do that? I mean, most salespeople talk 70 or 80 or 90%, but to talk 30% or less, you have to do something, you know, to make that happen. And, you know, any thoughts on your end, what that would be?
Well, you know, I think it is ask more questions, and I think silence is a wonderful thing, right? I mean, it's hard. It's okay for you and I to sit in silence for, I mean, 10 seconds seems like a lot. If I was talking to you and I asked you a question like, hey, Dan, when was the last time you measured your marketing?
Yeah, I would say
there, 10 seconds.
That's a great question. You know, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me, you know, it's probably been a while. Yeah. You know, it's not that have to answer it right away, like we did in third grade, right? We can think about it. And that's what a seasoned salesperson does is that silence doesn't drive them crazy. So, you know, a new salesperson, a second feels like 15 or 20.
So maybe we go into like, a question would be like, about this is, instead of talking all the time, it's about questioning, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe you have some tips on that. Like we can walk through, like, is there a better way to ask questions and when to ask the right questions? And I know kind of like you've helped me with this, but you know, a couple maybe tips on techniques. I mean, it's going to be hard. I mean, these are things you have to practice and role play, but you know, some of the things, I think questions are wonderful.
Right. So When I talk about questioning, it's a prospect. When they ask me something like, hey, Dan, when can you deliver that? You know, I'm going to say, hey, I appreciate you asking me that. I soften their question and then I reverse it. I say, Greg, you know, curious, what's your time frame? When would you want to see it delivered? Okay, because if I just shoot from the hip, hey, when can you get that to me? I might create a huge problem internally for my company that's not necessary, or I might, you know, I might be way too far off. You know,
I
so
could
I'm
say
going to reverse
6 weeks,
questions.
right? Sorry, I could tell you, like, as a salesperson, I could be like, well, it takes us 6 to 8 weeks. And you might say, I need it in 3 or 4 or,
Right,
yeah,
right. Or they might say 8 or 12,
yeah,
you know, which is fine. So
yeah.
I'm always asking them questions back so I can identify what's really happening in their world. And here's something that I want to take your listeners away is every time you throw the ball back to the prospect, you have a huge opportunity to learn about them. Every time you reverse and ask them a question back, hey, sounds like the delivery time frame is important. Can you tell me more about that? Okay, so we say, soften the reverse. A reverse is asking them a question back. And I'm going to tell them, you know, appreciate you bringing that up. It sounds like it's important. Can you tell me a little more? Okay. Or, you know, the one that everybody uses, Greg, that's a really good question. But you can't keep saying that, right? So you have to have other ones.
Yeah.
You know, Greg, I appreciate you bringing that up. I'd probably do the same thing if I was you. Sounds like it's important. Can you tell me a little more? Okay, so that's the world we work in and we work with our clients on.
Yeah, it's like peeling back the onion more and more without just answering the first time someone asks you a question. You know, I get the
Totally.
budget question a lot. I don't want, we could spend 2 hours talking about budget. I know I've asked you these questions too, Tan, but it's like sometimes just going back with a question like, you know, that, or, you know, that's a great question about price. How expensive are we? Many times you will come in and go, you know, you've taught me to like, hey, sounds like price is important to you. Can you tell me about that? Or what do you, you know, versus just coming out and me telling you how much it is or what it
Totally.
could be. So, hey, why don't we jump in? I think I'd like to get in this buyer seller dance we talked about.
Okay.
Kind of that dynamics between a, you know, this typical sales call with a traditional salesperson and prospect and why there's a better way kind of thing. So maybe we can talk about this buyer seller dance a little bit. And,
Yeah, good.
you know, what does that mean to you and what should it mean to our listeners?
Okay. The dynamics of a traditional salesperson with a prospect typically sounds like this. And I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. Our salesperson's taught to, you got to bond and rapport with your prospect.
Sure.
Okay. When I bond and rapport in a traditional world, my prospect says, uh-oh, salesperson's in my office. Game on, protect yourself, right? But the traditional salesperson then goes to the next step, and that's to identify a need. Okay. Hey, Bob, you know, how's your sales? How are your revenues going? You know, anything happening there that I might be able to help you with? Okay. The prospect, when they hear those kinds of fact-finding questions, they mislead. Sometimes they even lie. Hey, our revenues are going great. We really, you know, we're having a little bit of trouble with identifying new opportunities, but really our revenue's great. So they mislead. And we all do it as prospects. It's to protect ourselves. But then the salesperson takes whatever that statement is and they run with it and start throwing features and benefits all over the place. You know, new opportunities, we could make a dramatic difference around here. We do this, this, and this.
Sure.
Did I tell you we're the world's leader, on and on and on? And we call that unpaid consulting. We tell them all the things we can do to help them. And they say things back to us like, hey, I really like those ideas. That's interesting. You guys do all of that? And you know, I really, it's interesting you tell me that. And so then the traditional salesperson tries to close. We're told to always be closing, right? We changed those ABC letters a little differently in Sandler, but so we try and close. Hey, does it make sense? Would we want to get started here? And the prospect takes that and delays. Hey, you know, really, I like everything you told me, but I'm not sure. Let me run it by the CFO. By the way, love what you're telling me. Can you call me next Wednesday? I don't know if you've ever heard that, Greg, or any of your listeners have, but it's the dreaded, I love your presentation, call me next week.
Yeah.
Okay. And we run out of there before they change their mind. Okay. And next Wednesday comes and we chase and they hide. Okay. And that goes on for 3 or 4 weeks, and you start playing games with yourself. What did I do wrong? Why aren't they responding to my emails? They won't call me back, and so that 30 to 40% of what a salesperson does is that chase while they hide world. Okay. And that's typically what the dynamics are in traditional selling. And we want to protect ourselves from all of that.
Yeah. I think about I'll get back to you. This is great information, Dan. It was the
Right.
best information I've ever heard. You did a great job. I can't, I'm really got to get back to my team. I'll get back to you. And then the normal process is we hang up, I go tell my boss, I go, oh my God, I had a great presentation. They said I did such a great job.
Yeah, I got a new client. I just got to call him next Wednesday.
Yeah.
I think I got one.
Yeah. And then usually what happens?
Yeah.
We don't get
and we chase and they hide. And
the think it over is the other one we hear a lot. Like, oh man, I gotta think it over. And then you have these techniques that really help get over these little roadblock dams. And I think that's what I appreciate.
Well, yeah.
So go ahead.
Totally. Yeah. So think it over is typically, I know that I used to think it over is I'm planting seeds for the future, but typically think it overs never really come to fruition. And so what I like to do if somebody says, Dan, I really like what you're telling me, and I just need some time to think it over, I'm going to really kind of push that. Hey, Greg, if it's really not a good fit, and you're just trying to be nice and it's really a no, it's okay to tell me no. We'll still be friends.
Yeah.
And that person's either going to say, yeah, you're right, Dan, it's a no, or they're going to jump out of their chair and say, wait, no. I just got to run it by our CFO, right?
Yeah.
So what we're always trying to do in Sandler is get the truth. Okay. Salespeople spend way too much time assuming, thinking, hoping that certain things are going to happen or should happen. And it's okay to just ask. It's just, how do you ask? Right.
Well, so we'll go through, I'd like to jump into the Sandler steps and what can change that, because I am kind of jumping ahead with some of these tips, but that was I learned a long time ago in Sandler, was living in Hopa land as a salesperson, right? Is that, God, man, I hope I get this, or I hope they call me back, or I hope this happens. And it was really, it wasn't a cookbook strategy. It wasn't a process. Why don't we do this? Let's go through the Sandler steps, because we've really talked about a lot of different things in the last 20 minutes. And then, we'll get into like maybe a couple closing tips. How do we get a hold of Dan? Where should they look for information? We'll put it out there also, but really, why don't you walk through some Sandler steps? Maybe there's a icon. I won't take away your thunder. I know what we call these things, but it is amazing. So why change? Why get out of this normal buyer seller dance? And what can they do?
Right. So we're all about the truth. And so Sandler has 7 steps, if you will, in a technique for sales process. And the first one is we bond and rapport as well, but we don't talk about what's in their office or, where they went to school or any of that. We talk about things like eye contact, mirroring. We use some other types of things to allow us to build that trust and comfort. Disc profiling is really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
People listening can Google DISC, DISC. But our first step is our upfront contract, and it's our agreement with the prospect. What's gonna happen today. I'm gonna ask you a lot of questions. You're gonna have questions for me. We'll figure out if there's even a fit. And if there isn't, it's okay to tell each other no, fair enough.
Yeah.
And then if there is a fit, we wanna go to that next meeting, we'll pull out our calendars. So that's an upfront contract. And then, as everybody in sales knows, we've got to identify pain. But most salespeople don't know what that means, okay? They use pain indicators typically. A pain indicator in my business might be, or in your business, I might say to you, Greg, I need your help. We're not getting enough leads, okay? And traditional salespeople take that and run with it and just start telling the prospect all the things they can do. that doesn't really mean much to you. I'm not getting enough leads. It can, for example, are you getting a few? Are you getting, how many do you need? How long's this been a problem? Have you done anything to fix it? Well, curious, Dan, what if you don't fix it and you don't get enough leads for the next 12 months? What could that potentially cost the business? Okay, and if that happened, how would you feel about it? So that we get to that emotional level of pain to find out, can I help them or not?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing a doctor would do, by the way. Okay, and then we go into budget, and I do budget. People are amazed, but I can ask somebody a budget question in the first conversation. Hey, you mentioned you're not getting enough leads. It could cost you a few $100,000. I get it. Curious, if you wanted my help, what do you think an investment would look like that you'd be comfortable if assuming you wanted my help?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's budget, and then we're going to go into a decision process. I like to say, the world is, hey, Greg, are you the decision maker? I could never do that. So I have to say things like, hey, Greg, curious, does the decision all fall on your shoulders? Or is there anybody else helping you? Because I want to present to the decision team.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we go into what we call the sixth step in Sandler is called fulfillment. And it's like a doctor fulfilling, a requirement. And it's really our presentation. And it's only, we talk about only what's important to our prospect. A, B, and C, that's what we present to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a feel for, during our presentation, hey, are we hitting the nail on the head? Or maybe this isn't even close, scale of 1 to 10. We get a measurement from their world. How are we doing here? Does this make sense? Or are we on track? If we're not, how do we regain that traction and get to the 9 or 10 where we want to go?
Yeah.
So that's fulfillment. Okay. Fulfillment is about, in an hour meeting, it might be the last 10 minutes. Okay. Now, in that traditional model I talked about, I was throwing features and benefits all over the place in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting.
Yeah. We talk about how great we are. And let me tell you who we worked with.
Yeah.
Okay?
And how everything and all the things we can do for you. It's not about that. So, our presentation is the last 10 minutes. And if you've qualified that prospect through, there's a compelling pain, they have a budget that fits your world if they wanted your help, and you know what the decision process and timeframes are, you're driving the process to present. Okay, and then there's all kinds of things we do in between each of those, but just in a quick overview, that's the Sandler model. Okay.
Yeah, it is a powerful model, and I would ask anybody that listens to this now or in the future and we're going to give something that people can get a hold of Dan or to download some information. We'll have that on our site. And I know Dan's always great to talk to people about struggles they might be having in sales. This is the perfect time to be planning all the time. I think like, if you're struggling or you want to be different, I think it always lines in your sales process. We work with that all the time. We're trying to figure out what is that sales process? Where's the holes, right? And that helps us always guide to where the stronger leads are going to come from, how people are closing. Yeah. And I'm really grateful that Dan, you're here, and Sandler and things like that. So before I ask how should we get a hold of you, we'll have that information, but if people are listening,
sure.
You have a couple tips that you want people to consider. Maybe they're planning for next year, maybe they're struggling, maybe they're things like that. I mean, one is, I think, that's why I want to ask how to get a hold of you, but what should we tell people that are I'm struggling in sales?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of people in sales that could get to a higher level if they only had the tools, right? Mm-hmm. And so we'll get to this, but I'm more than happy to answer emails or have conversations with people to share ideas. I saw a lot of people along the way in my career just struggling because nobody ever really helped them understand the dynamics and gave them a process to follow, questioning. So I'm always happy to communicate with people. I'll give you a couple of fundamental things. One is that it's not about, as a sales professional, it's not about how much information we show up and give the prospect. It's about how much information we collect about that prospect. Okay, so we're not guessing, assuming, hoping we know. And we have to ask a lot of questions to do that. But that's a fundamental belief. It's about information we gain on the prospect. And be sure to understand the prospect's issues, the budget that they have to fix those issues, and what's the decision process prior to presenting any type of solution to them. Because once you present your solution, you can't go back and ask how decisions are made. Or when you mentioned that you're not getting enough leads, I didn't realize maybe it's not that significant. And if that's the case, it's okay to tell me that. That's why we want to do it prior to our presentation step. And that's important to me. A few other little tiny takeaways is salespeople have rights and we have equal stature. One of the David Sandler rules is act like you have 20 million in your pocket and you don't need the business. Okay, don't be desperate, okay? Ask questions throughout, use a tone. Tone's important. And listen to what your prospect is saying. And reverse them if you don't know. I'll give you an example. I might hear, Dan, I'd love to work with you, but we have a shoestring budget. Okay, everybody thinks shoestring means we've got no money, but they didn't say that. So I'm going to say, hey, fair enough. When you mention shoestring budget, curious, what do you mean by that? That's just an example of listening and not assuming you know what things are. Reverse it.
Those are really good closing tips. So, hey, we're going to have this information, but if people are jotting it down now as they listen, how should they get a hold of you?
Well, my email is dan.levitt, Levitt @sandler.com. And my cell is 303-829-2107. You can text me, you can call me. I like to help people. And, anybody wants to have a conversation with me, I'm happy.
And I can vouch for Dan. He's an easy guy to talk to. Again, I never felt like you were ever selling me anything. You're always there to help. You've led me to some resources, free resources online, to listen to learn more. And so I can't say enough about it. So, and Dan, I want to really say thank you for taking time today. We're going to have you on. Maybe we'll do a goal setting session coming up. You guys did such a good job with that. I'm looking to update my own sales board for next year that I look at, my vision board, which I learned many years ago, so some things are still on there, but, other things have come true. So it's pretty interesting when I look at it every day, you know what I mean? And have it in there. So maybe we do something like that to talk a little about the importance of goal setting and
be happy.
So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. I'm going to say goodbye to our friends on Facebook. And we're going to say goodbye to everybody that joined us today. I thank you for all taking time. Go to growlagency.com/Connex, CONNEX. We have lots of other webinars on there. We'll have this recording up there in the next week, but lots of great information on with other speakers that we've had on. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.